When you begin teaching with Somos, it isn't just a new curriculum that you learn. There are a whole set of skills as a teacher and techniques that you have to relearn as well. When you were teaching out of a textbook, you knew exactly what kinds of activities that you could assign for makeup work, for homework. If a student wasn't understanding how to do an exercise, how to use a grammar point, you knew what you could do to help them. Well, now that you're teaching with a communicative focus and your in-class activities aren't worksheets, they aren't activities in a textbook that can be sent home, you have a lot of new things to figure out. That is one of the reasons that we originally developed Garbanzo. We knew that teaching with a new program means more than just figuring out the new program itself. It means figuring out all of those other things. And Garbanzo was the solution that we developed to help teachers with that. My name is Martina Bex. I am the co-founder of Garbanzo. And in this video, I'm going to walk through 15 different ways that you can take Somos further with Garbanzo. Helping me out is my partner in crime, Sarah O'Donnell, the queen of Garbanzo, as we would like to say. She's going to be demonstrating exactly how to use Garbanzo to employ all of these ideas that I share. So without further ado, the first idea for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to replace an in-class reading with a Garbanzo lesson. So anytime in the curriculum that it says, read this with your students or give this to your students to read, you can find that same text in Garbanzo and assign it to students as an online independent activity. And what I mean is this. In Vamos Unit 2, for example, we have this text, ¿Qué es el desfile de faroles? And it is a printed worksheet that you can hand to your students and you can have them read on their own. It's also available as a shared reading where you would project it on the slide in the classroom and you can read it together. So whether you're giving students a printed reading in class or you're reading something together, you can replace that activity with a Garbanzo reading. So there's a couple different ways that you can search for text in Garbanzo. Every single text in Vamos and Somos is in Garbanzo. Sometimes the titles don't match exactly, so Sarah's going to walk you through the different ways that you can search for texts in Garbanzo and find them as a replacement, and then how you can confirm that it is indeed the same text that you're looking to replace.
Hey everybody. So starting here from the main page of the teacher dashboard, the handiest place to start looking for lessons is the Lessons tab. You can type in the title you're looking for if you know it, or if you don't know it, you can type in some keywords and a lot of times it'll come up there for you. The other thing you can do is you can filter. So I'm going to choose Spanish and I'm going to choose down here to the bottom, Vamos Unit 2. And we have all of the Somos units and all of the Vamos units listed here. In each of these units, via the filters, you can find texts that come directly from the unit. You can find adaptations of activities in the unit, Garbanzo original supplements that enhance the unit, and other closely related lessons. When you see a title that looks like a good fit, so where is our little lesson that we were looking for right here? You can open up the overview page and you can see things about the lesson like the objective, the length, the core vocabulary, and the full text. So this will be the key to determining whether or not this is the lesson that you're looking for. You can also open up a preview of the lesson. So from that preview, that's basically the student view, but with some extra teacher features like the ability to skip ahead, and the ability to show or to conceal the answers. So that makes it a really handy thing for using in class. You can see how Garbanzo breaks the content up into shorter pieces and integrates processing questions to help your students attend to what they're reading and help you track their progress. You can also preview the audio or use it in class.
El 15 de septiembre es un día patriótico.
The second idea for how to take Somos further with Garbanzo is to read something twice. Read it in class as written in the lesson plans and then assign it to students in Garbanzo for them to reread it. Now, when you read it in class, again, it might be something that students are reading on their own with a printed paper. It might be something that you're doing as a shared reading on the board. It might be something that they're reading in partners. Whatever it is, read it as written in class, and then to get extra bang for your buck, assign it as a Garbanzo lesson. We know when it comes to language acquisition that repetition matters. Students need repeated exposure to language in order to acquire it. There's no magic number for how many times students need to see a particular word or a particular pattern. Their brains will acquire it when they're ready, but that repeated exposure does have an impact on acquisition. Also, although we don't recommend that teachers assess content knowledge, we don't recommend that teachers are giving students quizzes about the culture that we talk about in the Somos curriculum, we do want students to learn it. And so that repeated exposure to information will help students to remember the ideas that are being shared in the lesson. Another benefit is that depending on what kind of an activity is being done in class with a given text, assigning it in Garbanzo might be an opportunity for students to take what is not reading something for fluency and turn it into a fluent reading. So one example of that is this text in Somos 1 Unit 2.5. It is a volleyball reading. That's how it's written in the activity. So students are working in partners. The first partner reads one line aloud in Spanish, and then the second partner translates that same line into English, and then reads aloud the next line, and they go back and forth, volleying the information back and forth. This is a great activity for you to assess understanding. So you can walk around and just listen in and see what are students able to translate, can they understand and what can't they. And it's also a great low stress way for them to speak some Spanish words. So it's just partner activities. There's only one person listening to them. So it's a great activity, but it isn't reading fluently. They're not really reading for fluent comprehension. It's word by word comprehension. So after you've done this activity in class, you could assign it as a Garbanzo lesson. Now, like I said, you don't have to have a funky activity in class to have read it that way to assign it as a second Garbanzo lesson a second time, but you can. And Sarah will show you again how to find one of these lessons in Garbanzo.
So for this particular lesson, I'm going to go to the Lessons tab, and I'm going to start typing the title. It'll bring it right up. You can go into the overview page. You can check out the lesson and see if it's what you're looking for. You can preview the lesson if you want to look at all the different kinds of challenges it's asking. And from this page, you can also assign the lesson to any class you want to, and you can also add it for premium subscribers to your Biblioteca, which will keep it in a library for them for free reading.
A third idea for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to read and discuss a text in preview mode. So as you probably know, most of the texts that students read in the curriculum are available as shared readings. Usually we have the texts available in the unit slideshow so that you can read through them with your students, but not always. And even if they are there, usually there's quite a bit of text on the screen. And so Garbanzo is going to provide you a seamless, easy way for you to read any text from the curriculum in Garbanzo. Here's a text in the curriculum that students are supposed to read on their own. So instead of assigning it like this, you can search for this text in Garbanzo and you can read it together as a shared reading. Now, one big benefit of doing it like this is that Garbanzo has built-in processing questions. So in Garbanzo, you're going to see just a few lines of text on a slide at a time. There are going to be visuals in Garbanzo that are not available in the unit slideshow. And then there will be processing questions. And throughout the teacher's guides, we are always recommending, use processing questions to support understanding. But if that's a new strategy to you, Garbanzo can be kind of like training wheels to help you develop that habit, develop that technique of asking processing questions when you're reading something with your students. In Garbanzo, you'll see a few slides of text, and then you'll see a processing question that's often an either or question, a really simple question, and then there will be a confirmation slide after. And so Sarah will show you what that looks like in this text.
For this lesson, I'm going to go into the Lessons tab, and I'm going to filter by Somos 1 Unit 2. It's coming right up on the first page, and you can open the overview and do whatever you need to do there, or you can go ahead and assign, add to the Biblioteca, or preview right from this page. So I'll preview it, and this is what you could put on the board to show your students. I'd say typically you're going to not show the answers when you're going over this in class, but you could choose to use the audio if you wish.
La carrera de San Silvestre.
Or you could read it yourself or have the students read, whatever floats your boat that day. And I'll go through a few slides of this until we get to a challenge slide. So here's a very simple either or question. Your students could raise their hands and respond. They could answer to a partner. They could write the answer on a board and hold it up, all kinds of different things. And when the time comes, you can show the answer and everybody cheers. And then on the next slide, you're going to have a follow-up, which is just going to kind of reinforce that information for them.
A fourth idea for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to use the last slide for a listening activity. So this is referring to teacher mode and open up the preview of a lesson. As the teacher, your students won't be able to do this, but as the teacher in preview mode, you can scroll to the very last slide. You use the sidebar, navigate to the very last slide of the lesson, and that slide is going to contain the full text of the lesson. So not just little pieces, bit by bit. It's not going to have any processing questions, just the full text on which the lesson is based. And if you have a premium Garbanzo membership, you're going to be able to access audio for that last slide. So it is a full audio, not broken up slide by slide. You can use that last slide as a listening activity. Every language teacher is looking for opportunities for their students to hear different voices. And we have some amazing voice artists in Garbanzo from all different countries. And so this can be an opportunity for your students to hear different accents. One way that you can use this is to modify an existing activity in the curriculum. So for example, in Vamos Unit 1, there is a listening activity toward the end of the unit where the teacher is reading aloud a script, and then students are looking at all of these different slips of paper, and they're trying to find the passage on their slip of paper that matches what they hear. Well, instead of you reading it aloud, either because you just want your students to hear someone else or because maybe your voice is a little shot, you can go to the last slide and you can play that full text and use the Garbanzo audio to complete this listening activity. Even if there isn't a listening activity in the curriculum, you can turn anything in Garbanzo into a listening activity. In Vamos Unit 1, there is a story builder, which is like a choose your own adventure style activity. It is designed to mimic the process of story asking of TPRS. And one of the plot lines, if you follow the story, will end up with this salsa picante story. You can find this story in Garbanzo, and even if you haven't read it in class, I mean, maybe your students did that activity and they end up with that exact storyline, maybe not. But even if you haven't read it in class, you can pull that story up in Garbanzo and you can play it for your students and then have them draw what they hear, identify a main idea and details. If you wanted to prep some materials, you could do something like writing out some different events that happen in the story and students can sequence them. But really, you can just make it a no prep listening activity by having students draw or write key ideas that they hear.
This is going to be a quick one. So I'm here in the Lessons tab. I am going to filter by Spanish. That's mostly just for fun because these are all Spanish anyway. I'm going to go to Vamos Unit 1 and I'm just going to do this like a teacher. I'm just going to open 45 tabs because I know that's what you all are going to do. And I'm going to bring up my 2 lessons that Martina mentioned and just kind of show you how quick it is to get into these last slides. I'm just like doing all the tabs here. So you can go very fast here to get to the last slide. And there it is. You've got this text. If you don't want them to see it, if you just want them to listen, then just don't show your screen or put a picture of a dog in front of it or something, whatever you want to do. And you can see here where you can navigate the audio.
México.
You can fast forward. You can go back. You've got complete control over that audio. And in Salsa Picante, same kind of deal. I can go forward, get to the end. There's my text. And I have the audio.
La salsa picante.
A fifth idea for taking Somos further for premium users is to use the word cloud to preview vocabulary. Yes, you may not know, Garbanzo has a word cloud available for every one of its lessons. And you can remember that every lesson from the Vamos and the Somos curriculum is in Garbanzo. And so therefore, there is a word cloud in Garbanzo for every text that is in the Vamos and the Somos curriculum. And you can access that word cloud and then use it to preview vocabulary. In particular, this is a great way to preview a text that has a lot of cognates in it. We know that over the last few years, students' reading level across the country have dropped. And so students that are coming into your language classes might not be able to identify cognates that students 5 or 10 years ago would have been able to interpret. So before you read a text together, you can use the word cloud, show students it, and talk about what words do these look like in English? What cognates do you see in this? And then when they go to read the text, maybe in Garbanzo, maybe in class, they will be well supported to understand it better.
I'm going to go in here into the Lessons tab, and I'm going to search up this lesson, and I'm going to open the overview page. Now, word clouds are, I don't want to say hidden, but they don't jump out at you. The button does not jump out. So right here where it says word cloud, yes. So I'm going to click that, and that's going to take you into the word cloud, I guess, builder, the word cloud generator. So as you can see, these are the most commonly used words in the lesson. You can regenerate it if you're not thrilled with what it's shown you. And you can edit the text size. You can edit the grid spacing. And you can either just use it here if you want to put it on the board, or you can download the image to use for whatever you need.
A sixth idea for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to compare versions of the TPRS story. So every single unit of the Vamos and the Somos curriculum, almost every single unit, comes with a TPRS story script. TPRS is Teaching Proficiency Through Reading and Storytelling. It was developed by Blaine Ray, and it is just a wonderful, fun strategy that might be a little bit tricky to learn at first, but such a fun strategy for co-creating stories with your students. The units come with scripts, and in the scripts there are underlined details, and the idea here is that you are going to replace those details with details that your class comes up. So instead of saying like, oh, ella es Ruby, and making this story about Ruby, you say, clase, hay una chica, there's a girl. ¿Cómo se llama? What is her name? And maybe they come up with like, okay, her name is Penelope Rainbow. So, clase, hay una chica, se llama Penelope Rainbow. Penelope Rainbow tiene muchos animales. Tiene un amigo. ¿Cómo se llama su amigo? And so you're co-creating this story with different details, but it's going to follow the basic plot of the script that you have here. Well, in Garbanzo, what we've done is we have preloaded other versions of the same story so that once you've created a story with your class, your students can go in and read different versions of the same story. One thing that's really beneficial about comparing these scripts is, first of all, administrators love anytime that you are using those skills like comparing and contrasting. So pop a Venn diagram up on the board. Talk about your story, talk about what it has in common with the stories that your students read in Garbanzo. Your administrators will love it. And I mean, that's just a great critical thinking skill for students to be developing. Second of all, when they're reading different versions of the same story, that's going to be using what Stephen Krashen has called very narrow reading. And very narrow reading is a strategy that supports acquisition, because students are reading a series of texts that are all about the same topic. And so there is natural repetition of vocabulary and language patterns across those different texts. And so students are going to get that repetition, which impacts language acquisition. And it's going to happen naturally and not feel forced. They're seeing these same words and ideas in context. So it's really going to support their language acquisition.
So I've shown you how to use the Lessons tab to find a lot of these stories. I'm going to show you how you can use the Learning Paths tab, especially for the Vamos lessons, because all the Vamos lessons are each in their own path by unit. The Somos ones are spread out. Better to use the filter for those. But for the Vamos lessons, you can dive right in here. And I'm obviously doing this one-handed, so I'm copying and pasting all my typing here. But I'm going to hop in here into Vamos Unit 2. And with these paths, we've put all the story builder stories together. So once you find one, you'll find the other ones all there in together. So this is the one that Martina was talking about. And you can preview it. You can give them, the last slide. You can have them go slide by slide and find similarities and differences, or have them mark them in the whole text. There's a whole lot of ways to use the Garbanzo lesson and the different versions to compare stories.
A seventh idea for taking Somos further with Garbanzo for premium users is to print images for retells, sequencing, or writing prompts. Again, because this is one of our newer features added in 2025, some users may not be aware that this exists. You can print out that sheet of images for retells, for sequencing, or writing prompts. Now, they're going to come in the order in which they appeared in the lesson, so that makes them really easy to use right off the bat for retelling. Students can look at the page of images, and they can use that as a scaffold for retelling the story, either orally or in writing. Or you can kind of scramble them up or pre-cut them up and have students sequence them. Maybe you play the audio from the last slide as students are sequencing images from the story. So there's a lot that you can do with these printable images that are found in that printable file available for every lesson for premium users.
All right, let's take a look at printables. So to find the printables, I'm going to first find my lesson, which I will use our filters. And this is in Somos 1, Unit 2.5, and I think it's on the second page, so I'm going to skip ahead. And there it is. I'm going to open up the lesson overview. And this is another one. I don't want to say it's hidden, but it's not going to jump out and bite you. Right here where it says printables and it says yes premium. You just click that and that is going to start a download. It's going to show up in your downloads folder right here. And so what you have on the first page is going to be the full text of the lesson. And then you have the images, which you can do so much with. So there are going to be a couple pages, however many pages it takes. And you can print those, you can cut them out, whatever you can think of.
An eighth idea for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to build a biblioteca, or a class library for the unit. So again, a biblioteca is a premium feature, and you can create a library, a biblioteca, for every single class. Now, you can have a general biblioteca going all the time, and it works just like a regular library where, in a physical library, you walk in, the librarian has chosen all of these wonderful books that people might be interested in reading. And me as the user, I can go in, I can choose what I want to read, how many times I want to read it, how many times I want to check it out. Just like that in Garbanzo, a student can go to the Biblioteca section of their dashboard, and the teacher can fill it with text that they think their students might be interested in reading or might be able to read. And the student can choose what they want to read, how many times they want to read it. So one really easy way to take Somos further is to change out that biblioteca each time you come to a new unit. So you can go through your search results when you filter by unit in the Garbanzo library. You can choose which of the lessons you want to put into the biblioteca, and then you can tell students anytime during that unit, hey, go into your biblioteca, read some of the lessons that I've put in there. You'll notice that when you filter by unit, there are a lot of lessons that will come up that are not in the curriculum. And the reason for that is that we tag lessons with a unit number that relate to the vocabulary in the unit and that relate to the concepts or the ideas in the unit as well. So you'll find some extra things, and maybe some of the text will be too hard for your students. You don't want to put them in. Maybe they're not appropriate for your context, but you can build that biblioteca however you want for your students to read.
Okay, so let's build a new class and a new biblioteca. You can see how fast and easy it is. So I'm going to create a class. And I go straight into it after I create it. I'm going to go to the Biblioteca tab, and you've got several different spots you could click here to add lessons. And I'm going to use these advanced filters again. So I'm going to filter Somos 1 Unit 1, all of the lessons that I would be expecting from the unit are in here, plus some extra ones that go along with it. And you can just add whatever floats your boat for your Biblioteca for that unit. And you can add the practice lessons right here with this button. You can also choose, if you plan to also assign these as official assignments, you can choose to hide them in the Biblioteca until after your students have completed the assignment. And that's it.
Idea 9 for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to use Garbanzo for independent free choice reading twice a week. This is a routine that many teachers who use an acquisition-focused approach implement. So free choice reading. We call it free choice reading because you can choose what you want to read, but it's not really voluntary. You have to read. And so instead of having students go into your classroom library, maybe you don't have a very robust full classroom library with physical books for them to read, you can use Garbanzo. So twice a week, just students know maybe it's Tuesdays and Thursdays when they come into class. The first thing that they need to do is log into Garbanzo on their device and read for 5 to 7 minutes. It doesn't need to be long for it to be effective. And you can also clarify for them if you want them to be able to go into their Biblioteca and choose what they want to read for that time. Or you can tell them, you can go in and if you'd like to work on some assignments that I've given you, you can do that as well. So however you want to establish that, use it for that independent or free choice reading routine a couple times of a week.
So this is a student dashboard, and this is one of my fake students, Greta Howdy, that I like to use when I'm trying things out. When you first log in, when Greta first logs in, you can see that she's got some past due lessons, past due assignments. She's got the next things coming up based on the due dates. And then you can also see her Biblioteca down here for free reading. So with the assignments, they have a due date, they're going to close. And with the Biblioteca, they're just going to be there for her until the teacher removes them. So in her Biblioteca, you can see it would list any kind of attempts that she's made on the lesson. And also, if you go into her lessons and into her closed lessons, this is just kind of fun data for people, but you can see how she's done on her different lessons, the percentage that she earned, which questions she got right and wrong. There's a whole lot of data here for everybody.
Idea number 10 for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to assign core paths for independent progression. And core paths are really the crown jewel of Garbanzo. We love these paths and we've worked so hard on designing them. Core paths are sequences of lessons that build vocabulary. So in the same way that Somos introduces a small set of new core vocabulary words in each unit, and then the core words from a previous Somos unit spiral into every subsequent unit, that is how our core paths work as well. They are numbered, and so the lower numbers come first in the progression. Core 5 works with 5 core vocabulary words. Core 10 works with 10 core vocabulary words, which includes the 5 from Core 5 plus 5 new ones. Core 25 includes 25, which includes the 10 plus 15 new ones. You get the idea. And so no matter what you're doing in class, whether you are following Vamos or Somos explicitly, or you're going off and doing your own thing for a little while, you can give students this core path and they can continue progressing independently through a series of language lessons. And one big benefit of this is going to be it will help your students who maybe they are just barely hanging on in class. Maybe they've had a lot of absences. These core paths are going to hit similar vocabulary. There's definitely a lot of overlap between the vocabulary in the core paths and the vocabulary in Somos, but it's going to be really basic, simple vocab that's going to help them understand what's going on in class as well. So it's a really great intervention that doesn't really feel like an intervention especially if you're assigning it to everyone. And Sarah will show you where to find these core paths.
So over here in the Learning Paths tab, this is where you can find your core and your thematic paths. So we're going to take a look at Spanish Core 5, which spirals in these core vocabulary words, esto es, se llama, grande, pequeño, and I, and then uses this additional vocabulary, numbers 1 to 10, colors, pájaros, este, some nationalities, and también. So Core 5 spirals in those words in this sequence of lessons. And I'll open up a couple lessons here so you can see what I mean. Let's see. Let's start with animal o persona. I'm going to do my 800 tabs here. So I've got the overview page for animal o persona, and you can see the words and you can see the text. So super, super simple. You've got animal and person and a couple examples of animals. And then when you open up the next lesson, ¿Qué es esto?, you're going to see we're doing some more animal stuff, but then we're also going to introduce objects and then a couple cognate objects in the text. With these core paths, you go back to the main core path page. So these are in order. And if you have a premium subscription, you can assign the full path to auto feed those lessons to your students. So it'll just, they finish one, it'll give them number 2. They finish that, it'll give them number 3. If you don't have a premium subscription, you can still take advantage of this, the way this is laid out. So what I would be doing without a premium subscription to kind of get a similar effect is I would just be assigning each lesson in that order. So you can do esto es, assign, animal o persona, assign, ¿qué es esto?, assign. And even with a premium subscription, you might enjoy doing it that way so that you can leave some stuff out or add some extra stuff in.
Idea 11 for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to assign Garbanzo instead of class makeup work. So again, one of the main reasons that we originally developed Garbanzo was to solve that problem of when I'm just communicating with my students in class, what do I do when a kid misses class? What can I give them when the value is that in-class communication? Well, you can look for Garbanzo lessons that pair with the activities that you've done in class. And just some examples, if a kid misses Vamos Unit 2 the first 2 days, in class, you're establishing meaning for new vocabulary. You are translating some vocabulary in context. You're doing this Muévete Si activity, and then you're learning about La Vaca Lola, learning the Vaca Lola song. There are substitutes for all of these activities in Garbanzo. So yes, your student will miss out on that in-class communication, but they will be able to complete the vocabulario importante lesson. They can do the ¿Qué tienes activity, which is a substitute for the Muévete Si activity, and they can read La Vaca Lola lessons in Garbanzo. And Sarah will kind of walk through with you how you can find lessons that might replace them. Do keep in mind there is a vocabulario importante lesson in Garbanzo for every single lesson in Vamos and Somos.
Alrighty, so let's open up these lessons. These are all together in the Vamos Unit 2 path. So I'm going to find these via the learning path. And I'm going to go to Spanish. Again, for Vamos and Somos lessons, that's not strictly necessary. Vamos Unit 2. And I can pull up the vocabulario importante, I can pull up ¿Qué tienes?, and I can pull up La Vaca Lola. And these will also come up if you use the filters. I just happen to know that they're all right there at the top if I open up the path page. So you can take a look. You can see the vocabulary, the full text, and I'll just open up a preview of that really quick so you can see what it looks like in action. Just a little bit of text, kind of like what you would do in class if you were going over this activity. You can show the answers, hide the answers, have audio, anything that you need there. For ¿Qué tienes?, you can take a look here at the full text. And this is a really cool one. This is like a dialogue. So I'm going to have to zip ahead to the last slide there and check that one out. So that's really something different. Like, it's awesome. Of course, preferable if the kid can just do it in class, but if they don't happen to be there, or if they just want to kind of experience this content in a different way. And then La Vaca Lola, you can take a look here and scan it. Very, very short little lesson. This would be great bell ringer or something. And we'll open it up here and you can kind of see what that looks like.
You can take Somos further with Garbanzo by differentiating for multi-level classes. So nearly every teacher finds themselves in the situation of having students in their level 1 classes who are fluent in Spanish, or maybe they're heritage speakers, or maybe they came out of immersion programs, but it's really level 1 is not an appropriate fit for them. Similarly, you might have students in your upper level classes that have somehow skated by and they don't have the language proficiency to be reading and understanding the text that you're using with Somos 2. Maybe they came out of a class that was very grammar heavy, and so they haven't had that opportunity to develop their interpretive reading ability in class. Whatever the reason, you're going to have students at different levels of proficiency in your class. So you can use Garbanzo as a tool to find texts that are an appropriate challenge, and then you can create individual assignments for different students. So just one example, in Somos 1 Unit 1, there is this short little in-class reading that you do where the whole class is reading this biography. And you see this and you think, wow, this is really appropriate for my kids who have only had 1 or 2 days of Spanish. But for my kid who's already fluent in Spanish, this is really easy. This might be an opportunity for you to pull in a Garbanzo text and assign that as an individual lesson. They could even complete it in class while you're reading this together with your students. So I would look at this and I say, at its core, this is a biographical text, a super simple biography, but I know that Garbanzo has biographies. Let me go look for a biographical text in Garbanzo that I could pair with this. Similarly, if you're reading about sports or if you're reading about a country, you can always search Garbanzo for those topics to find texts at different level of complexity that would be more appropriately suited for students at different levels of proficiency. Here's another example from Somos 1. It's a very simplified retelling of the story, of the wildebeest story. And I noticed this picture kind of looks like a poop. It's supposed to be, is it a log or a crocodile? But I guess there's multiple things it could be. Anyway, if you go into Garbanzo, you'll see that there are many different versions of that wildebeest story. And so you can find one that is more of a challenge for your students who are ready for more language.
So when you're looking for texts that you can use to differentiate, a really good resource in Garbanzo are the biographies. So I'll start with a biography. I'm going to go into lessons and I'm going to search one that I know we have multiple versions of, which is this Dara Torres biography. So I'm going to open up the 3 versions of that, and basic is the most basic. And you can see it's a very, very short little text, just the very basic details. In the simplified, we add a few more details. And then in the standard version, it gets even more complex. So a lot of our biographies will have 3 versions, whether it's basic, simplified, standard, or it's simplified, standard, detailed. We do try to write something for everybody on the biographies. Another way that you can differentiate is with individual assignments. So I'm going to choose Greta in one of her classes, and I can create an individual assignment for her. So I'm going to go in here and use my advanced filters, and I'm going to choose Somos 1 Unit 1, and I am going to type in new. And let's see what comes up. All right, so here is the basic story that is in the curriculum, and then here is the past tense story, which is in the flex. So it could be for Greta that I would want to assign her the past tense story, and maybe I won't do it for everybody. So you can assign whatever you want to and just assign it for one student, or you can go into the whole class and assign whatever you want for everybody.
Idea 13 for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to use Garbanzo to introduce or reinforce culture. So perhaps you come across a Somos unit that does not have a cultural connection. There are a few. Well, you can search for that unit in Garbanzo. You can filter by that unit and then flip through until you find a cultural connection that maybe isn't in the original curriculum. Remember, in Garbanzo, the reason that you have all of these extra lessons that come up with unit tags is because we have tagged lessons that relate either to the vocabulary or to the ideas shared in the unit. So when you find a cultural lesson in a certain unit tag, it means that that cultural idea probably uses the same vocabulary from the unit. And here's an example from Somos 2 Unit 3.
So let me show you how you can find those extra readings. This one that Martina mentioned is from Somos 2 Unit 3. So I'll go into there this way through the filters. Somos 2 Unit 3. I'll scroll down a bit and just kind of seeing what's in there. And there it is. So we can open up one of these lessons. We can take a look and see if it's showing us what we want to see. And then we can preview it and assign it to your students.
Idea 14 for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is to extend thematic units with related readings. So similar to the last idea, maybe a unit does already have culture in it, but you want to do more. So, in Unit 9, we talk about legends. And the legends in the unit are Kukui, and we talk about Silbon. Well, in Garbanzo, there are dozens of additional lessons. Let's take a look at some examples from Unit 11, which is about sports. In the unit, we talk about deportes en los países hispanohablantes. We talk about baseball en la República Dominicana. We talk about los niños triqui that play basketball in Oaxaca. But there is so much more in Garbanzo, so you can go deeper with any theme that is in the curriculum. You can assign those lessons to your students. You can project them and read them together. You can fill their library with them. Go find more lessons in Garbanzo to extend those themes.
So when you're looking for thematic readings, I'm going to go in here to lessons, and you can just play around with these filters. So I'm going to look at topics, and I'm going to choose sports because I know we have 1,000 lessons on sports, and I'm only exaggerating a little bit. 200 lessons on sports, and I will use my language filters here. If that's too much for me to deal with, then I might also choose a Somos unit to go along with it, or this might give me some better results. I can choose a country to go along with it. Here's a lesson, and something that is at the bottom of every lesson overview are suggested readings. So if that doesn't seem like a good fit, you might scroll down a bit and find something else related that would work perfectly.
Our final idea for taking Somos further with Garbanzo is perhaps the most helpful for you. You can plan ahead for sub days. If your students have access to devices when you are out, Garbanzo is the only thing that you need for sub days. You don't have to be at school to make copies. You don't have to worry about sending copies to your school secretary. All you need to do is make sure your students know how to log into Garbanzo and that they know that that's what they do on sub days. You can give them specific assignments that match what you are planning to do in class so that you can stay on track. You could come up with new assignments to send them that are maybe just fun so that they have something fun to read on sub days. Or you can just let them know, hey, if I'm going to be out, your job is just to go into your Biblioteca, into your class library, and read for the whole class period. You'll be able to see data about what your students have read, how they performed on the lessons. And so it just makes a really easy sub-planning for you. And I cannot tell you the number of times we have been at conferences and a teacher walks by the booth and they're like, that's what my students are doing today. And it just feels really good for us to provide such an easy solution for teachers when we know sub-planning is just, often it's just more work than if you were just to be there in school. So we make it easy for you to take sub days with Garbanzo. So for all of these lessons, using Garbanzo for sub days or assigning it as students for makeup work, extending cultural ideas with Garbanzo, using it for differentiation or a free choice reading routine twice or 3 times a week, creating a biblioteca that's specific to each unit that you swap out every time you go to a new unit, rereading texts that you've read in class, replacing things that you've read in class, whether printed or projected, printing the images and using them for retells or sequencing, comparing stories that you've created in class with stories from Garbanzo, previewing text with the word cloud, using the last slide for listening, projecting the preview mode and reading it together and discussing it, or looking for new cultural connections. I want you to take a few minutes and think which 2 of those ideas are the most salient to me, the most relevant to me. I could totally see myself using those this year. Write them down somewhere so you remember. And then save this video so that you can watch it again when you're into the year and just need a little bit of help, a little bit of inspiration. If you have any questions about using Garbanzo, you can email us at hola@garbanzo.io. That is HOLA @garbanzo.io. And we would love to get you the support you need.
Fly on over to garbanzo.io and start your free 30-day trial. You can start taking Somos further with Garbanzo.